everybody, it's Katie Gebley. I am starting today with just some paper and some Sharpies, and I'm going to walk you through 3 simple ways to warm up before you start creating your artwork, or if you just need a simple exercise to zone out if you're feeling overwhelmed. This is a great meditative practice here, and all I'm doing is putting dots on the piece of paper, and this is something literally anybody can do. And the next step is just to connect the dots. It's like an adult version of connect the dots, I guess, a more abstract version. And there's no rhyme or reason here. We're just connecting 2 dots together, just making some marks on this page. This is a great exercise to do with some music playing in the background, just kind of getting in the zone and relaxing a little bit. I do this exercise a lot before I teach classes with my students, just because I know when they're staring at a blank canvas or a blank sheet of paper that it can feel a little intimidating. So just getting started with some motion here is a great way to get going. So then once you've connected all the dots, add some more dots if you're feeling like that. There's definitely no rules here. It's just kind of going with the flow and simply drawing lines over and over and over again. And of course, what you could do when this is complete, if you wanted to, is fill all these spaces in with some color, just like you're creating your own coloring page. This is actually how I got started creating my coloring book called Splendid Coloring that I created years ago. It's still listed on Amazon. I'll put a link here in the notes if anybody's interested, but it was simple line drawings like this that I created, and then I bound it together, and now it's selling on Amazon. So my goal with this is just to fill up the page as much as I can, getting to all the corners and the edges and all the spaces until it feels good, or until I'm feeling good. And what I'm doing now that the page is pretty full, is I am leaning into the neurographic art idea, where we're just gonna go over the lines that we already created and just add a little bit of a curved edge in each corner. Now the next exercise that I'm going to do with you right after this one will involve a little more of that curved lines. And it looks so simple, and it is so simple, but it's also just so therapeutic, just to kind of zone out and not have to think too much about what you're doing. All I'm doing here is going back over the lines and adding just the slightest little curve around each corner to soften it up a little bit. Since I am using Sharpie markers here, this is a piece of cardstock, so it's a little thicker, so the marker doesn't go through. But you see how just with a few lines and a little bit of time, you can kind of create a pretty cool looking piece. And you can take this as far as you want. I mean, you could add more lines. Like I said, fill it in with color, or just leave it like this and just have it as a practice that no one else sees. It's just for you, and use it as like a warm-up exercise. It's just like stretching before we run or exercise, kind of getting in the right mindset. getting some motion in place. All right, I am feeling done with this one, and I'm going to move on to the next one. Now, this one is also super simple. We're just going to start with a curved line. And again, the goal here is just to fill up the page with some lines. And this one is definitely more of a representation of neurographic art. And if you're not familiar with neurographic art, it's a technique that incorporates free form lines, and they are meant to create a connection between your conscious and your unconscious and kind of create a pathway throughout this process to connect with yourself. So as I said earlier, it's just a very therapeutic practice, and it's kind of one of those meditative experiences where you're zoning out everything else and just bringing things down to the basic level of drawing on a piece of paper in a very simple and free way. And the part of the process here that really gets you kind of in the zone and in a kind of a therapeutic state is where you take this step of connecting all of the lines with a curve. So anywhere there is an intersection between two lines, you just curve it off a little bit. And I like to go back over the entire line, and you will find that this process is incredibly relaxing, and it feels just really good. The whole idea with neurographic art is to work through some of the heavy stuff, some of the fears, and kind of shift a chaotic scene into more of a peaceful, relaxing, calm setting. So you can kind of see that happening already, where this just random curvy line is now feeling a little more calm and smooth. And that's all just because we're connecting and curving each of the intersections. It's a bit hard to explain when you aren't actually doing this at the same time. So this might look a little wonky for you, but I would really encourage you to give it a try. I find myself doing this more and more when I'm sitting in the car line or I'm traveling and I have a journal or a piece of paper with me. It's just a great way to zone out. That doesn't include having a phone in our hand. Kind of channel some good, calm energy. All right, this is feeling like a good stopping point. And then to share with you one more of these types of exercises, I'm going to go back to what I did with that first one, where I start with just some dots. I find that just adding dots is really helpful for just to provide a very minimal guideline to get started. Again, it can be a little intimidating making that first mark on a piece of paper. So just adding some dots or marks can get you going really easily. So I'm simply going to connect these dots just like I did in that first example. And again, my goal is to fill up the page and get it to a place that feels balanced and comfortable for myself. And this time I'm going to start just creating my own lines within the shapes that I've already made. So instead of feeling like I need to connect dots, I'm just going to kind of freehand this and connect spaces that help this piece feel a little balanced. And it's incredibly satisfying. Again, it's hard to understand this if you're not doing it, but it's incredibly satisfying adding these lines in here and filling up the blank spaces. After doing this a couple times too, you really get the hang of it, and you don't need quite as much guidelines. And you could really just go crazy with this. You can fill these types of pieces in as much or as little as you want. I remember when I used to work a corporate job and I would be sitting in meetings, and this is the kind of doodling that I would do as I was just thinking about other places that I wanted to be. So I'm adding this like double line technique here, which also feels satisfying for me, but you come up with whatever feels good for you. You could add some curves within these straight lines. You could add some dots. You can color some of the spaces in, like I said earlier. You just kind of make it your own and in a very effortless kind of way. And that's what the point of this is just to not think about anything else and just do something that feels good for you. And I will say, as much as I've mentioned, kind of zoning out and not thinking about much, it's also a great practice if you do have something that you're kind of brainstorming inside. It feels good to think through those things while doing a practice like this as well. So I'm feeling like I want to do kind of an outer line here. Give it kind of like a container of sorts. But again, I encourage you just to play with this and do what feels good. And if you do, please share in the comments or send me an email. I would love to hear your process and what you've come up with for this. I mean, I could probably sit here all day and fill in lines and spaces and add all sorts of fun little details to this. And I do have another video where I share this technique. I filmed it probably about a year or two ago, so I will link that in the notes, and I'll place it here above as well if you want to check that out. So as you can see here, it's not a masterpiece in any way, but it's something that feels good and it looks pretty cool in the end, and I'm really happy with it. And now I feel ready to embark on the world now that I've drawn my lines and my squiggles. It doesn't look like much, but it really, really feels good. Hope you guys enjoyed. Talk soon. Cheers.